Right, hello everyone. So I'm Aurelijus Stanislovaitis and I am a full-time security tester for Visma group of companies here. And I'm also the chapter leader for OWASP Lithuania chapter. So today I will talk about WebAppSec and how to navigate between fear, uncertainty, and doubt and ignorance. Yeah? So this is a very wide topic, and I have only half an hour slot. So I'll try to keep as short as possible. Laconic. The term means short and concise way of expression. Now, the term itself originated from ancient Greek. Ancient Greek area Lacedaemon. That was the area where Sparta was located. Sparta was a purely militaristic country, and they had a little value in arts and literature. Instead, they valued short and concise way of expression. When the king of Macedonia, Philip II, father of Alexander the Great, sent a threatening letter to Sparta telling that he will destroy the city if he will win the war and exterminate Spartans. Spartans answered with a single word, if. So that was, of course, a tough decision presented by Philip of Macedonia to Spartans. They had either to choose the slavery, to surrender and choose the slavery, or choose the field of battle and risk their lives. Now, what the Spartans did, they turned the dilemma of decision back to the Philip of Macedonia. And then it was his turn to make his decisions. Okay, so, but this is a story, of course, about the risk and about making decisions in our uncertain world. So if we would have a power of prophecy, so then we wouldn't be talking about the risk anymore. There would be only causes and consequences. Well, let me give you an example. Suppose you're flying a plane 10,000 meters above the air and you jump out of the plane without parachute. What sort of risk is that? Well, I'd say that it's not a risk anymore. It's 100% guaranteed fact. Yeah? So cause and effect. So the risk is about our uncertainty about how bad the future can be. So, but unfortunately, we are not able to see the future, well, at least most of us. And probably the great deal to that is attributed by the fact that we live in quite a complex world. The complexity is all around us, and especially when we talk about technologies. So it's not surprising at all that we have lots of questions and little answers about causes and consequences in our world of technology. Then it's not surprising really that lots of otherwise nice people have a very vague idea about what the internet is, about what the web is, and they kind of may have an idea that it's a pretty nice place to play and have fun, harmless place. And I'm not speaking about my grandmother. I'm speaking about otherwise technically well-grounded people like developers. So in my daily job, what I do in my full-time work, I'm doing security testing of web applications. Again, this is my daily job to identify vulnerabilities in different sort of applications until they are released to production. Some of these vulnerabilities are big and obvious and would allow attacker like direct access to the customer data or even post-financial transactions. Some of these vulnerabilities are not so straightforward and obvious. Now, here I'll give you one example from a real example from 2 weeks old. I've been having a small argument with one of our developers in quite a distant country, and the point of the argument was whether server providing stack trace to the client side, server crashing and providing stack trace to the client side, whether that is a security issue at all. So my point was, I was trying to prove, don't try to read that, it's just normal stack trace. You've probably seen that lots in your life here, as well as me. So my point was that, well, I've seen different stack traces and some of them would reveal some really interesting details. And then I said to that developer, so if your stack trace would reveal some hard-coded secrets or some variables with, let's say, session identifiers. Yeah, so then attacker could misuse that in a very straightforward way. Now, developer answered to me with a single if. So, and it's hard to argue in that way. But what I see here is a failure of a very technical person to understand that risks accumulate. That one raindrop raises a sea, and then drop after drop, you accumulate that risk, and will you be ready to swim in that sea of risks? Now, we live in that interconnected world of social networks. And our world inherits some characteristics from social networks, such as, for example, democratization of the knowledge. So the knowledge which previously could only be owned by some specific and narrow circle of individuals. And I'm speaking about now, for example, about the hacking skills, about hacker knowledge. Now, these days, this knowledge becomes democratized, and is available to anyone. Materials are available, tools are available. So anybody can be a hacker nowadays. And it's not surprising to see those young people. I've collected this, this collection is actually from articles from the internet, and they're all real children. Yeah? And they all have a real right to call themselves hackers. Because that one in the middle, he's the youngest certified ethical hacker in India. I think he's 8 years old. And the one with a blue t-shirt on the top row in the right corner. So this guy is 5 years old, and he managed to bypass Xbox access control protection, and Microsoft accredited him as a contributor in their site. Yeah, so there's his name in the Microsoft site as a contributor for security vulnerability detection. He was able to reproduce that, so that wasn't just pure luck. So, and now, well, it's pretty realistic that when we have blackdown in a city, in several blocks of a city, electricity blackdown, so then we talk, it could be a hacker attack, yeah? Because things like this are happening. Now, you probably know this guy from news. So he was tampering with internal plane systems, with internal plane network while flying on it as a passenger. Pretty smart idea, isn't it? What about these two? You probably have seen these two in the news. So they were able to prove in August, yeah, and that was on Wired magazine, yeah, that they can control remotely systems of Jeep Cherokee vehicle. And, well, Chrysler had to recall 1.4 million cars, I think, because of that, because they needed to patch the software. And hackers could do as bad as disable transmission and brakes while the vehicle was driving on a highway, right? What about light bulbs? So this light bulb, it has an app on a phone. You can control the color of the light with that application. But then it appears that it has vulnerability in the software, and hackers would be able to access your internal networks through your light bulb. Now this is this is cool. Light bulbs are not more secure. The good news is that vendor released patch, and you can see here that bullet point number 3, security improvements and various bug fixes. So, but the bad news are that it takes 15 minutes to patch one light bulb. What about smart toilets? So there have been reports about smart toilets that attacker can remotely enable such function as bidet or change soundtrack for somebody who's and change music. Yeah? So lots of physical processes are moving now in a cyber world. Yeah, and so attacker wouldn't need normal now to go to the physical bank to get the money out of there, because banking sector is moving to electronic world. Attackers are moving there as well. And now, think of that army of hackers, yeah, marching all over the face of the earth and spreading doubt and fear. So this is actually the world we are living now in. This will be our world tomorrow. Now you should not, at this point you should be really concerned, yeah. You should be worrying quite a bit, because it's confusing, yeah. Because it's confusing. the uncertainty is confusing. Our brain refuses to accept that. So what I would suppose is we could reduce uncertainty by a great deal by reducing the complexity. Sounds simple. How can we do that? Let's take, for example, OWASP top 10. So anyone familiar with OWASP top 10 here in this room? I see a couple of hands here, more, right. So this is actually the list of top 10 risks of web applications. And so it's often said that if you take care of that top 10 of technical risks in your web application, so you would be taking care of 90% of your technical security badness in your web applications. Well, it could be true. So, but then we have like 10 items, yeah, with different symptoms and with different technological explanations for each. So is this very simple? No, it's not very simple. Can we simplify that at least a bit? I think if we would be looking into root cause of these problems, into the root cause of these different symptoms, so then probably it could be even simpler than 10 items. So, and the number one would be about the input validation, yeah, about the variable sanitization and input validation in the first place. So, because of failing to validate input, all sorts of injections are possible. So, including that infamous SQL injection. Now, SQL injection is a very old issue, and remediation for that is very known, and very available methods are known. But it's still surprising that from time to time we're still able to find some SQL injection occurrences in our applications. Yeah? So, but it's about injections, yeah? So input validation injections, that's correct. What about cross-site scripting? Is the cross-site scripting also input validation issue? You would argue that, hey, it's about the output, cross-site scripting. Primarily control to prevent cross-site scripting from happening is encoding output, right? But, well, what is an output to your server and to your application? That is an input to your browser. So actually, we're talking here about the same type of input, just the interpreter which is running on your browser. So, and if you look into taxonomies like CWE, so then you would see that these both fall into the same category. So, but like I said, remediation tactics and remediation options are different for those two. And I quite often refer to OWASP cheat sheet series, and there you can find lots of technological cheat sheets which would explain in detail of how this should be remediated. Yeah, use that a lot. So, and to finish with that input validation, well, you know where this picture is taken from. What movie is this picture from? Nobody remembers. It's from Matrix. Well, the text in that table, it's in Latin, means know thyself. Know thyself. Yeah. So, as a developer of your web application, you should know your web application. You should know what input is good for your application, what input is good for your interpreters, and allow only that input. Yeah. Do input validation and sanitization. And that's it. By this, you get rid of injection, cross-site scripting, and great deal of insecure redirects and forwards. Okay? So far, so good. Now you can see that we got rid of 3 items in OWASP top 10, 7 to go. What about another root cause? Failure to limit the exposure. Okay? Failure of limiting exposure. Now, this comes in 2 flavors. One is failure to enforce access rights, yeah, for users or for processes. Another one is about exposing your insecure, how to say, internals, yeah, internals to the public. Those internals which should not be exposed, right? So, again, where to start here to solve the problem? Start with making your lists. Make a list of user roles, of application roles, of access permissions you would need, yeah. Make that list as simple as possible, as short as possible. If you cannot make a shorter list, then, well, start from larger, but then reduce it. And the same with your assets. List your assets, yeah. List your application components. decide which are good to be exposed for public, which are not, right? And make your application enforce that. And this is it. By doing that, you get rid of 3 other items in top 10. What would be those items? That's insecure direct references, that's exposure of sensitive data, and that's missing functional level access control. All of these 3 are mostly mitigated with limiting exposure, yeah, and configuring access rights. Fine. So we have taken now care of 6 of it, 4 to go. What about your secrets, yeah? So InfoSec, it takes 2 to play InfoSec game, yeah? Your opponent is an attacker, your opponent is a hacker trying to hack your system. Now, security heavily relies on some small pieces of data, cryptographic keys, passwords, different tokens, etc. So if you use predictable passwords, keys, and different sorts of tokens, so then attacker can predict them, and your security will ruin like a house of cards, right? So this is probably mostly about the crypto, but not only about the crypto. So use proper algorithms, use strong and long enough key length, and well, just watch the news, yeah, whether there's new OpenSSL vulnerability out there, and just patch, okay, when needed. So the takeaway from this is don't be predictable to your attacker. Okay? And by taking care of that, we take care of 3 another vulnerabilities that would be about the session management, that would be cross-site UCAS forgery protection, and also I would say that having third-party components with known vulnerabilities is also about the predictability. So attacker, by just knowing that you have third-party components with known vulnerabilities, attacker can predict your vulnerabilities and just exploit them. So this is it. We have only 1 item left. It's about configuration, insecure configuration. But I mean, in reality, what is insecure configuration? That's probably either has something to do with access permissions, yeah, configuration of access permissions, or exposure of your assets, or exposure of your infrastructure, yeah, or maybe it has something to do with parameters of your crypto algorithms and password length, etc. I think we've covered that already. Voila, OWASP top 10. If we look into that from the root cause perspective, so it can be as simple as 3 items. Yeah, input validation, limiting exposure, and being unpredictable. Okay, but that was about the prevention. And the very best of my colleagues told me last week that, listen, prevention was yesterday. Today it is about the detection. Our applications need a detection capability so that they could understand, that they could notice that they are being under attack. Our applications don't need to be blind when somebody starts attack to them. And we have solutions, we have mechanisms for that. There's yet another one, very bright and very mature project from OWASP. It's App Sensor. So it's a standalone component which you can use by any of your web applications. Yeah, you would need to adapt your web application slightly. You would need to place a hooks into your web application code where App Sensor would be invoked and activated. So, and then App Sensor has a set of predefined, events or well, App Sensor has several the list of predefined items where to look at when attacker starts tampering with a web application. For example, if your session identifier is being tampered, so that might be a good indication of attack. Or for example, if your user agent is changing in the middle of your session, so then again, normally that wouldn't probably happen, never. So that's probably a good indication of attack is happening. So App Sensor has these predefined events, and you can use your own custom, and then that when application would trigger that, all this would go to central database, and then you can analyze them and have a real-time alerting and so on. So your application becomes self-aware, yeah? And your application now is able to detect when somebody is tampering with it, and even maybe before the real damage is done, so that you can stop these attacks before the damage is even done. Isn't that a cute capability? Wouldn't our applications need to have similar capability? I think all applications should have that. All right. But then my very best friend developer continued. So detection is today. Tomorrow is contamination. Contamination of the breach. Well, let's be realistic. Everybody gets hacked eventually. This will happen to each and every application someday. But the question here is, when this happens, are you ready for that? What would you do if this would happen to you? Right. Again, simple wisdom. I see a beauty in simplicity. Simple wisdom. Know your assets. If you don't know what assets you own, so probably you wouldn't know what attacker took away when they broke in and started to steal your assets, yeah? So enumerate your assets and know what your data you own, what data you are managing, right? Don't put all eggs in one basket, yeah? When attacker breaches one basket, so all of your eggs would be broken. So disperse your data, yeah? Attackers breaching one location, so then it takes only part of your valuables. And there's a lot of talking now about compartmentalization, yeah? About using containers, yeah? Have you ever heard recently about the Docker? Everybody's using Docker? Yeah, I see a couple of hands. So again, let's build our applications and our infrastructures in a modular manner, yeah? Let's build it from a separate building blocks in that way that when something is wrong with one of these building blocks, they can be easily assembled and disassembled. So if attacker did manage to hack one of your building blocks, so then you would just remove that and put a new one in that place. And of course, you would need a lot of good automation with that, because you wouldn't be in time with manual processes. So automation is critical when we are reacting to the breach. Okay. So I think that's these were the main ideas I've managed to tell you in a very quick manner. Yeah. But to finalize this slide of decks, I'd like to say that there's a beauty in simplicity, and I believe in that. So keep that simplicity and make your applications simple and make your mechanisms as simple as possible. Simple and understandable. By reducing complexity, you're reducing unawareness. I guess that's the main takeaway from my slide of decks, from my deck of slides, yeah. But then I've started my story from an old Greek tale. Yeah? No, that's real story from the history. Yeah? That's real history. So does anybody know how that story ends? Who did lose? Who did win? Anybody knows the answer? Somewhere in the middle. Probably somewhere in the middle, yeah. So neither Philip of Macedonia nor his son Alexander the Great, who actually conquered the whole world known to Greeks at that time, and a bit of more. Yeah. So neither Philip of Macedonia nor Alexander the Great attacked Sparta. They just didn't attempt. They just didn't take a risk to do that. Okay. Thanks a lot. And I would take. I have lots of time for questions and answers now, I believe. Yeah.
Sure. So, questions? Anyone?
Not really. I think that was too simple.
Okay. So I have one.
Okay.
As this session is later on will change more to mobile discussion and enterprise mobility, and this, all the mobile phones coming into our enterprises are creating also requests for mobile apps, for hybrid apps, for web apps, what is working for mobile. Do you maybe give some highlights what our enterprises can think about when they are thinking to reproduce their own applications to work for mobile, or to create the new ones for the mobile? What we need to take in mind?
Well, the mobile again is it's very similar to web applications actually. So from technical point of view, so of course I would be saying that APIs, having a proper APIs, and having proper controls on the APIs is critical. But then this probably has something to do again with on a wider picture. This has probably something to do with the use cases of these mobile applications, yeah. And it's pretty obvious that mobile devices and especially not everybody has modern iPhones, yeah. The vast majority of the people connected to the internet in some countries which don't have iPhones, say in Africa or Asia or whatever, they would be using simple devices with smaller screens, with slower processors, and they wouldn't support some technologies, yeah. But what impact does this have on the application itself? And I mean, they're using services, they're using Facebook, they're using lots of different stuff, yeah. And so these service providers, they need to adapt to that. And so what this limited functionality of their device, what impact it has on mobile application? It probably has lots of impacts, yeah, and probably these impacts are not so positive. So you need to think of that, of how to find the balance between, providing that functionality in a mobile device, which itself is different from, well, a bit different from desktop applications and from applications you would run in a large window in your browser on your computer, yeah. So that I think is the main challenge, to find the balance between usability and technological solutions so that security wouldn't suffer.
It's usability and security, basically, the balance.
Well, usability and security, they're often... Yeah. I can tell you a couple of scary stories about how usability experts come into project and teach people, some really scary stuff. Yeah.
Okay.